So good. We're in the new year.
Good. We're in the new year. I got a cold, but we're going to push through. All right. It's going to be a very much a practice what we preach, where sometimes you just need to show up. So we're going to do it. All right. Question. It's your turn.
Question. Okay, so my question today is definitely gonna lead us into our topic of like vision. Everyone talks about it, but nobody actually integrates it. And I think this is a topic that you and I really are passionate about. So I'll use the word passion because vision is so important, and integration is even more important, because if you don't integrate it, it's just a dream that like lives in your head. So you're actually really good about this. You're the person to go to for this, because you're so good. I'm the vision person a lot of times, but I'm not the integration person. I struggle with this a little bit. But you're our guy, Taylor. So my question for you today is, how do you go from vision to completion? Like, what is your process? I want you to let us in your head, open up the mind bubble and let us in your head. How do you what is the first step? You're like, okay, vision, Christine threw this weird thing that she wants to do with us, or I have this idea because you've started the businesses, you've done the things. You're like, I want to do this race. You have all kinds of different areas of your life that you do this in. You and your wife built a house. How do you go from vision to completion? What is that process? What is the Taylor Thomas process of integration? I am so curious.
Whoa. I don't know. You better be careful what you wish for. We open this box up. there's a lot that might come out.
Well, team, this one is 5 hours long. We're really sorry.
Yeah. That's a great question. And it is something that I am passionate about. I mean, we both are. You're right. And I'm specifically passionate about it in the direction of making sure that it leads to execution, right? Vision without execution is not meaningful. It only matters in terms of the impact that we're able to make in our own lives as well as the lives of others if we actually do something with it. And the real fact of the matter is that most vision never makes it out of ideation, right? We have these great ideas, we say things, and then we don't change anything or put anything in place to actually make it happen. So I'll take you through the process. I got it pretty clearly mapped out in my head. So the first part of the process is it happens internally, right? And this is a really key piece, because when we have a vision, we have this grand, big idea, this, big, hairy, scary, audacious goal. We jump straight. So there's two camps often. We do nothing, or we jump straight to execution. And I think there's an intermediary step, which is an internal dialogue and some questions that we need to ask ourselves. So we have the vision. First, we need to recognize, and I like to map out the cost of pursuing that thing. Everything has a cost. It has a financial cost, potentially. It has a time cost. It has an emotional cost. It has there is a price to be paid for pursuing something over and above what you're currently doing. Because if you want to do something different, you have to be someone different. And there's a cost to accomplishing what's required to be someone different. So first, ask yourself the question, here's the cost. Am I willing to pay it? Yes or no? I think this is a really key inflection point, because it is okay if the answer is no. Retool. Decide, right? Go back to the drawing board. What is the vision? What's the goal? If the cost is too high, that's okay. It's better to get ahead of that. And there's no better example of that than leadership, and specifically to my experience and your experience than entrepreneurship. The fact of the matter is the cost is extremely high, and you better be on board, because it is going to take more than you ever thought it would, and you better be willing to pay it. And so check that box. Yes, I'm willing to pay the cost. Then it's expectation mapping, which we've talked about a lot. And that's where so then the reason that we get just derailed so often, and we are not able to fully realize and recognize our vision, is that our expectations are not in alignment with reality. So one of the biggest points of friction is that expectations are misaligned. So if we can get ahead of that, that actually helps to flatten the learning curve. Go ahead and forecast that out. What's it actually going to look like? What's it going to require? Right? Like when you and I were building Impact Initiative, I did this. So I was like, what's it going to require? I was like, well, I'm already pretty busy, so it's going to require work on the other side of my existing work, right? So you and I got together, like, we're going to meet every Saturday until we got it sorted out. Okay, so that's a cost, right? I needed to know if that cost was something I was willing to pay. I also needed to communicate that cost with the people around me. I needed to go to my wife and say, hey, this is the cost. Like, are we collectively willing to pay that? I am, but are you? So it also opens up conversation. Then the expectation mapping. What are my expectations that? Well, the expectation is that while I might think that I can balance it all, there's going to have to be things that are going to have to go by the wayside. So let me align my expectations. There's going to be a lot of things I'm going to have to say no to get this thing to play out. Then map out expectations. So do those two things, and those happen really internally before we start an external execution. And those are two really big pieces. If you do nothing else, do that before you start to take action. Because there's going to be some people listening to this podcast, they're like, I'm crushing it. I got no problem taking action. I don't doubt that. That's great. But like taking action in the wrong direction without clear expectations and understanding the cost can still get you into trouble. Because you get a year down the road and you're like, oh shit, the cost is too high. And this is not in alignment with what I thought it was going to be. I promise you, 98% of that you can get ahead of with the two things I just talked about. So just take a beat. And then you back into like, what does it actually take to accomplish that? So then I just I think about it from like an infrastructure perspective. So I'm like, okay, what are the tools? What are the resources, and what are the relationships? Those are like the three pillars that I kind of live by. So I think like everything goes into those three buckets. What are the tools? What do I actually need to get this thing done? Is there software? Is there something physical? Do I need a new piece of equipment? There's a tool. Resources. Where do I need to learn about this thing, right? What do I need to be better equipped to pursue this thing? And then relationships. Who do I need around me to support me and prop up the foundational pieces of this so that I can make it happen? And then I literally just back into, okay, like what's our goal for the vision in terms of timeline? Let's say we want to get this done. I'm talking about like, we have our overarching vision, which is our vision for our life, and we can build goals around that, right? So what are the steps that take me there? But I still use tools, resources, relationships. And then I literally just drill down all the way into, and with Impact Initiative, we have lots of tools that we've built that you and I actually use consistently, which are, tools to set 1-year goals. And then we have a roadmap, and that gives us, we have waypoints, and we have evaluations, and then we can build a roadmap around that. And ultimately where we land is a 30-day roadmap of like, what's required? What am I doing in the next 30 days? It's going to move me in that direction. So, that's my process. And I do that every single day, rinse and repeat. I don't really waver from that. And then I check back in on that too, right? I think that's the other thing is like we get started and we don't re-examine and reevaluate. And that's something that you and I have worked on in terms of like holding ourselves accountable, is to have like monthly evaluations and like check in on the roadmap. Like you have to come back to the thing so that you can know if you're heading in the right direction. Because time also gets away from us, and you can take a lot of steps that feel like progress, but they're in the wrong direction, and you get too deep into that thing, and you've realized that you spent 6 months doing something that wasn't moving in the right direction. So
Yeah.
that's it. That's inside. That's all the darkness right there.
And for clarification, that was not previously mapped out. That's just like, I think it's amazing. That's why I asked the question. I think it's amazing because you're so committed to that process and consistent in that process that at any point you should add that to your pod match topics you're ready to talk about at any point is vision and how you integrate it. But I think that's like, it's so a piece of you that you just know how to do it. And you can like easily map that out and talk about what that looks like because you've done it 100 times. It's like the sets and reps are there. You're as clear on that as I am on my makeup routine. And we were talking about that.
It really is true. Like that's my version of you, like just blindly being able to follow all of the steps for your makeup. Yeah. That what's been your experience? So I want to like draw the through line here. We set the vision, like we're in the new year, we get fired up, and we said, everyone talks about vision, but we don't integrate it. So what has been, give me an example of an example of a time when you integrated your vision into your work and like what that actually looked like. Because we can like wax poetic about my process and these things, but ultimately, like, what does that actually do for us when we integrate our vision? What do we get that is different than when that's not a part of the process, or when we lose sight of it or don't use it as a North Star?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest difference for me when I set goals and integrate my vision versus just setting goals because it's what needs to be done. Because goals can be impactful either way. But when we integrate our vision and those things come together, all of the sudden, it brings in what actually matters to us. And I think I was reading my Enneagram the other day, and it literally says that the challenger does better when they're alone. Like it's an easier pursuit if we build a life that we're pretty independent. But then it says that it's not actually our best, it's just our most comfortable. It's like we can accomplish a lot, and there's less resistance in the pursuit for the challenger if we go at it alone. And it truly made me sad. And I think the biggest difference when I integrate my vision and my values and the things that matter to me and that core foundation is I'm not alone. Like I truly feel that on a daily basis. Like there's just, maybe it not as much at work, but there's just moments that I'm like, this would be so much easier if I didn't have to rely on other people. Like I could do it so much faster, so much, like I just wouldn't even have to think about it. I could just like wake up, run my race, go to bed, like rinse and repeat. And yet I know that I can go farther for longer if I integrate people. And my vision is doing it together. And I also know that I can do it from a place like my vision is a world where everyone sees challenges or crisis as opportunity. Like we just are able to see the opportunity in all of the things. And I think if I just set goals to solve problems, it's super easy for me to do that. But when I integrate my vision, I'm able to do that from that place of not just like seeing the challenge, but truly seeing the opportunity. And I live from a place of joy and enjoying the process versus just being pissed off and like knocking my goals out of the park. Cause I can do both, but they feel very different. And I think that's probably the biggest change. When I integrate my vision, I'm connected. I have a shared vision with others. I invite people into the process. And then I actually look at the opportunity, not just solving the problem. Like I get excited about it. I allow myself to enjoy the process versus just like running to the finish line because I can do that and I'm fucking good at it. But
Mm-hmm.
also, it does, to your point, it takes a toll. Like there's a huge cost to doing it alone. There's a huge cost to not being connected and not seeing the opportunity and not being joyful or enjoying the process. There's a huge cost to that. It does wear on you. Like you can only run so long, so far in that way. And then you gotta like you gotta take like more time to rest because you're running sprints, not on a marathon. I think that's the biggest difference for me. That's a great question. That would have been a
Mm.
great question also.
I think the language piece is like, it gives us, you touched on this, but it gives us common language to communicate
Mm,
with as well, which I think is something that if you set arbitrary goals and you back yourself into arbitrary processes, and if we use my pillars like tools, resources, and relationships, if you build those and they're arbitrary and they're not linked to a vision, it becomes very, very challenging to communicate why you care about those things and why other people should care about them.
mm,
And that is what is actually very isolating, right? Like to your point, like when you're, if I can't tell you why I'm doing these things, and I can't talk to other people about it and get them excited or get them on board or ask them for support or communicate why I need buy-in from them. And I'm talking about like down to your family. Like if it doesn't have to be about business. If you're, one of your goals is to get healthy this year, you need to be able to communicate why that matters to the people around you. You're going to need buy-in from your family. You're going to, because again, there's a cost, right? Like where does that happen? There's a time commitment there. Like there's a conversation to be had. And when it's not connected to your vision, it becomes very, very challenging to communicate that in a way that is sticky for both you, the person setting the goal, as well as those around you. And I know for a fact that is why so many New Year's resolutions fall through the cracks. They don't stick. They're arbitrary, right? They're
mm.
not connected to a vision. Those resolutions, those goals aren't in the pursuit of something bigger. We've set them because we saw an ad on Instagram. We're like, oh, I should do that. Like new year, new me. New year, new you in what direction? Right? Like new year, yes, new you. Okay. Is the new you in service of your mission and vision? Is it in the direction of the thing that you care most about? If not, it's never going to stick because there'll be no reason to give a shit about it. It'd just be something else in your to-do list that's going to be easy to toss out. So that for me, like the integration piece, I think language, we've talked about this a fair amount, but like language is so powerful. And I think that is actually one of almost like the hidden benefits of a clear vision is it gives you, it allows you to have a confidence in the language that you use to describe why you're doing what you do in a way that is so captivating and so compelling that like you can't not do it and the people around you can't not be drawn to it.
Yeah.
Um, right? Like imagine that we all know these people, right? People are like, "Hey, what have you been up to?" Oh, I'm busy. Okay, great. Or somebody shows up and like, "What are you doing? How you been?" They're like, "Oh man, like, build new relationships. Like I'm going to the gym every day. I've got these new opportunities." Right? Like when people are firing and they're connected, like that's a different person. And you
Yeah.
can't help but be drawn to that person versus the person that doesn't have that direction,
Yeah.
right? And I think we all have the ability to have that energy. I think vision is often the missing piece. Like I bet you're not excited if you get out of bed in the morning and you have no idea like why what you're doing matters at all.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what creates a true leader is your ability your ability to actually get people to say I'm in and understand your vision. It's to mobilize people in the same direction, the right people in the same direction as your vision. Like that's actually the point of vision, is that it's so compelling, it's so moving. Like you're saying, that people say like, I'm in, like, let's go, let's do it. I remember when one of my business mentors told me his business vision for one of his projects is to restore a city through one block. And I'm like, holy shit. Like he literally bought an entire block of a city almost, and like is literally transforming that city through one block. And it's like how do you not get on board with that? You're like, I don't even, how do I help? Like how do I bring awareness to this? And I talk about it all the time because it's that compelling, it's that moving, that you're like, someone has a vision that's that fucking clear that you can't, like you're saying, you can't not get on board. You're just like, of course I'm going to drive 2 hours away to eat at your new restaurant in this like bumfuck nowhere city, because hell yes, like that's incredible. I want to be a part of that. I want to invest in that. I want to show up for it. I like, sign me up. But I think a lot of times that like, to the integration piece, we have this vision that's just kind of like mediocre. We're like, I'm going to like lose weight, or I'm going to, like we have this, like, it's not even a vision, it's a goal, right? And we're like, I don't understand why my team's like compelled. I like we heard one this week that like just kind of stopped us in our tracks. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to expose anyone, but we were both just like, that is so, like, you're telling your employees, like, technically what we're saying here, their vision was like, basically, when you boil it down, it's like, our vision is to like not support our team and to make sure that like, that our team is running so lean that you're going to be overworked.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was the like epitome of the vision. And like, I think it came from a truly good place. A lot of times we set these visions, not a good place. I'm going to reframe that. We set these visions from a place of need and a place of problem solving versus coming up to that 30,000 foot view and zooming 100 years out. And if you zoom 100 years out, you're going to be like, that's actually not the vision that I want. Like, that's not the vision that I want to cast. And then we're wondering, their challenge is their team's not excited about it. And I'm like, well, I don't think I'd be excited about it either if I was being told that I was going to have to work harder because we're going to run lean all year. Like, that just is not, and I get it. Like, the challenges that they've occurred the year before are in need of a change, but we have to look 100 years out or even 10 years out to back into that. And then we have to understand, how do we get our people behind it? Like, integration means everybody says, I'm in. Everybody says, I'm on board with that. So I mean, that's a huge piece of what's really challenging is, you and I have like had the vision, and we like come to the people that should be rallying around that vision. And we're like, this is it. This is where we're going. And people are like, I'm not in. No, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, did I get it wrong? Is it not right? Or I don't have the right people. And I think that's a huge piece of integration is, it's like, what if your people aren't on fire for it? What if you get a flat line response? What if everybody just gives you that like deer in the headlights look? How do we get it integrated then?
That's a good question. I'm going to back up a little bit. This isn't the answer to your question, but I do like, vision is so important because it is an attraction mechanism. So when you have it in place, I think you do solve a large portion of that. If you're doing it retroactively, which is fine, and truthfully, like, I mean, that's a lot of the work that we do, right? We come into organizations that paid a PR firm to put their vision and mission on the break room behind the ping pong table, and no one gives a shit, and it doesn't actually move the needle, and we're not using it as a tool to empower us and like facilitate that communication that I talked about. So when that's happening and we're doing it retroactively, I do think once we get a really clear vision, it is the mechanism, one of the primary mechanisms by which we can build a culture that's meaningful. And the fact of the matter is that I think that there are going to be people that aren't in alignment with that vision. People are attracted to things that make them feel, one of the biggest draws for people in the workplace is they feel safe. Well, if people are drawn to feeling safe because there's not a clear direction and they can hide in that because they don't have a vision and they don't want to step into the highest and best versions of themselves, they're going to feel really good in an organization with a bullshit vision, right?
Mm,
But once that organization gets super clear on their vision and they lean into it and they deploy it and they actually integrate it, those people are going to run for the hills because it's going to expose what they don't have, right? It's going to create an inherent disconnect, and it's probably going to create a feeling of unsafe, of a lack of safety, because they're going to now be called and pushed to connect to something that's meaningful for them. Or if they're only interested in hiding in the mundane and not being on fire and not being compelling and not, they're probably not the right fit, right? And so we see this all the time. Like there can be a divergence, right? That is, again, there's a cost. And that is one of the costs. I'm not saying that has to happen, but literally, you and I see it play out every day. Like when you get clear, expect there to be some ramifications.
yeah.
And you can approach that different ways. You can absolutely pull that person into, pull's not the right word. You can invite that person into your vision and give them the tools, resources, and relationships they need to build that for themselves and build that bridge. And that absolutely can happen.
Yeah.
But there might be people that just aren't interested in that. And that means they're not a good culture fit. And so, yeah, I think, when they're not on fire, then we have to decide what that means from a leadership perspective. And I think that's a really key inflection point for how we show up as leaders. What do we do? Do we invite them in? Do we give them what they need to build their own vision and then give them what they need to help them see the bridge that can be built between their vision and the company vision and how they show up in the organization? Or do we just call it quits and say, oh, they're not a good culture fit, they're out?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think that's a very pivotal moment for leaders, is like, how do you handle misalignment? I'm not saying you should hold on to them forever. If it's true misalignment, and in my opinion, if you've given them the tools, resources, and relationships and it's still not connecting, then probably not a great fit. But I think that's where we, from a leadership perspective, can have a big opportunity to stand up and step in to people's lives and create environments where they can thrive, or we can give up on them too early, potentially. And even if they end up leaving, right? Like it's the like Richard Branson quote. He says, treat your people so well that they never want to. What's it? Now I'm fucking it up. Something like treat your people so well where they like never want to leave, but when they do, make sure they're better than when you found them. Yeah. Anyway, you guys get the point. You see where I'm going.
Yeah, and that's something I don't know who I stole it from, but that's something that I've said literally since I started my first company, and actually when I was a teacher. Like I don't care where my people go. Like I look at our business as a launching pad for people to create their impact, right? And accomplish their vision. And if it's not here, then like I want to launch them into the world better than I found them. And I want to like hand them back to the world with more skills, more tools, like healthier version of who they are than when I found them. And I think it's funny because like we joke about this all the time because my kids leave and I'm like, leave the world. And then they say better than you found it. And like now when we're on a call, like if the kids are leaving, Taylor will like yell it out so that we make sure it's just like an ongoing like joke. But I think to like integration, I think you hit the nail on the head by saying we have to give them the tools to understand their vision. I think a lot of times people are really affected by change. People have most people do not like change. I would say there's more people in this world that don't like change and are afraid of change than are not. And the only way to get them on board is to help them understand how they connect with that change and why that change actually helps them accomplish their goals. And I think a lot of times as leaders, we'll come in expecting to integrate something and we're like, here's the change, here's the new vision, let's go. And people are like holding on to their seats. They're like, oh God, like, I don't want to change. Like, this is hard and this is uncomfortable. But if we invite them into it and we invite them into that process and we help them understand what matters to them, and then they can easily understand that puzzle and how it fits together with their puzzle piece, I think all of a sudden it's easier from they feel a part of it. They feel like they belong. The one thing that I've noticed is when we're setting new goals, say it's been a goal for 3 years, even if we're bringing it back up, all of a sudden when there is change, people go, how do I fit in? Where do I fit in? Am I still needed? And we start to question our value. And if we can give people the understanding of their unique contribution to the change, all of a sudden it starts to make sense. Right? They're like, oh, I see. Now they're excited. I see how I fit into that. I see how my value can add value to this project and to this goal and to this vision. But so many times I think we come off like super come out of the gates hot and we're like, here's the deal. Here's where we're going. And everybody's just like holding on, right? Their hair is just kind of like getting blown back. And then we like walk away from that conversation. We're like, they're not on board. I don't have the right people. And then we get insecure. So insecurity breeds insecurity. Vision and confidence breeds and like creates vision and confidence, right? So if we start by helping them understand that, they're going to be able to receive ours and then they're going to bring their contribution to it. And that's where we get to be better together. So many times we don't invite people into the process, talking about integration. We don't invite people, we don't integrate them into the vision process. And then it just feels like a slap in the face. They're like, I just spent an entire year working on that. Are you saying we're throwing that out? Right. And a lot of times I think part of it is actually helping our teams or even ourselves understand how we're actually integrating everything that happened in the last year, the last 2 years. We're integrating that into this year's vision and goals. And so many times it's like new year, new me, new business, new goals, all of those things. It feels very disjointed, right? We're like, scrap everything we built last year. Like, I kind of feel, we won't get into politics, but I kind of feel like that about like the integration of like a new leader in our country. It's like, does everything just like go away? Like, how do we build on all of it? Like, that's always my question. Like, if I was coming into office, I would want to build on the things that are really working. And I feel like that's it feels so disjointed from someone who is it's abstract. I don't know the inner workings of all the things. It feels very disjointed. And I would imagine that's how it feels to our teams, right? You're like, I just worked this entire year on this project and we just like mold over and we're like, next, right? It feels like it's a waste. If you have just poured everything into a project that maybe fell flat and we're not continuing, how do we bring that full circle and integrate that pivot or that shift or that change into the year, but like from a place of we're going to build on this foundation. It's just going to look a little different versus like overhaul, uproot, and like all new, right? I think that as leaders, we feel, or maybe this is a me thing, I feel expected to bring the new. I feel expected to like give our team something new and do the new and, like create something incredible and big. And I think it actually is stopping growth on our team in a lot of ways. Like it just makes everybody panic more times than not because it's the intensity that creates fear.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think the real fact of the matter is, it's easy to be pulled in that direction. As a leader, you want to ride those highs of the inspirational moments and the new ideas and the new projects. And and those are fun and exciting. But yeah, I think the fact of the matter is that it is largely the same stuff over, consistency compounds, and you have to do enough of the same stuff consistently to know if it works or not. And I think we mix it up too much for sure, and I see, for sure, I think I hadn't really put that final point on it, but yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big, a big piece of leadership. And even there's just kind of this double edge, like, people even think that they want that. They're like, oh, what's the new idea? What's the thing? What's coming up for our new initiatives? And the answer might just be like, get really good and continue to refine the stuff we're already doing. Right. Or let's lean in for another 6 months to see if this actually works or not. And again, tying that into our vision, like, why are we doing that? Well, because this is where we're heading. And we know that if we keep doing this, we're going to move in that direction. And you said it earlier, there is a difference between goals and vision. And I think we get that confused a lot. Is your vision is the thing that you're in service of. It's the thing that you're always moving towards. Your goals are the stepping stones that get you there. And we've mixed those together. We're like, my vision for the year is like, no, that's your goal for the year. Mm-hmm. Your vision is this. Now you can certainly cast a vision that, gets people excited. But I think that there's a piece of that where we get wrapped up in like new goals, new initiatives, and then we kind of conflate and confuse the communication and the language piece there, and those become our vision. And we're just always mixing it up, and no one actually knows like where they stand.
Well, they're not moved. Sure. They're not moved by it, right? It's not compelling enough. It's either fear mongering them, or it's not compelling enough for them to actually want to get on board and get excited about it. And I think people just don't feel involved. I think that's one of the biggest things that we've seen really in the last couple of months. Some of our best leaders have made their biggest jumps out of companies because there's a lack of transparency. And I think people just want to feel included. Like, when we have understanding, when we are involved, we have the choice to say yes or no. We have the choice to get in, like, to get on board and to go all in and to support those leaders and support those goals. And I think if we don't have that buy-in in our teams, we're not going to integrate our vision well. It's going to fall flat. And if our team's not on board, if our families aren't on board, then it's really hard to move towards that vision. Like, to your point, if you don't have the relationships and the support, it's going to be really exhausting. Remember that song, Fight Song? It's still one of my favorites. Did you ever hear that song? Rachel, whatever.
When we were on our road trip across the country, we listened to that song like 4 bajillion times.
Did you ever hear it before then, or that was the first time?
I had never heard that in my life, and then I heard it 4 bajillion times.
Such a good song. I pulled up the lyrics for you guys just for this point, but she says, losing friends and I'm chasing sleep. Everyone's worried about me. I'm in too deep, and but I still have fight in me. Like, I think that is that if we don't have the buy-in and we're not integrating well, that's where we're going to be. We're going to be chasing sleep. We're not going to have, like, we're losing people that we should, like, maybe there are the times that, like, we need to lose the people, to your point. And I've learned that that's just a part of the course. But I think to your point earlier, specifically, a lot of times we lose the best people because we didn't integrate them. We didn't invite them. We didn't give them the transparency and the tools to understand how they fit into it. And therefore we lose them. And then we're chasing sleep because we're doing it alone. And like, yeah, we might still have fight, but for how long? Like, we might still be there because we're clear on the vision, but all we had to do was integrate that vision and invite people into it and help people understand how they help us, right? Help people understand how they fit into that. And I think that is one of the biggest pieces to integrating vision, is getting your relationships involved. like having people in your corner so you don't have to fight alone. I think that's what's been most beneficial with our partnership is there's just days that like I would have felt so alone on this in this fight, and instead I'm supported because I have someone in my corner and I can trust we have the same vision most of the time. Like our core visions align. So when I'm off and I'm out of alignment with my vision, I have that North Star of our vision together. And you're like, you're missing the ball. Like, come back, come back, come back
Yeah.
home base. Right. And I think
Yeah.
that's so important when we look at integrating our vision into the day to day.
I love it. That's a strong ending. Yeah, because I think it is people, right? I think doing like your vision in isolation is just not going to be fully actualized, and so I think getting really clear, communicating that, like getting people behind you is and like one plays into the other, right? Like when you do that, it like you are also finding the people that are aligned with like they play off each other, right? Like you, once you're clear on that, like watch who comes out of the woodworks to like support you and rally behind that. Like it's not like you have to, you're not finding them. It's just the way that works. And we see that play out every day. So if you're looking for support, if you're not clear on what your vision is, if you're not clear on how to take your vision and use it as a mechanism within your business to actually create that cohesion, that environment where people thrive. That is so often the missing link. Is you might have an amazing vision, but understanding how to actually deploy that in a meaningful way within your organization so that it creates the outcome and moves the needle in the ways that you want it to, or you might expect it to. That is what we are here to do. That's what we do every day. And it's something that, like you said, Christine, early on, that we are passionate about. So you can find us at impactinitiative.network. We would love to hear from you. You can click the button in the top right corner to reach out, and we'd love to connect. Let us know how we can support you. This is the time. Don't wait. Time flies. By the time you're in another quarter, it is hard to do this stuff retroactive. So now's the time to set the stage for the year ahead and put the pieces in place. So again, that's impactinitiative.network. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time on Impact Minded.